All right. Good morning to everyone out on the West Coast. Good afternoon to everybody on the East Coast. We'll get started here in 2 seconds. Make sure we got some more people rolling in. We do have a Q&A session that's available, so if you have any questions as we go through, feel free to hit Q&A at the top of your screen and write a comment, and we will take those either in order as they come in, or we will hold those to the end or to when we get to a particular part of the presentation. Let's give everybody one more minute to get in here and then we can get started. All right, let's get started. So welcome everybody. Today we're here to talk about our coordinate update for 2026. It's been a minute since we've done a webinar, and it's been a minute since we've done a coordinate update. I think our last one was January 2020 in the before times, and we're here once again. So today we'll be talking about new realizations, solutions, and reference frames, what this means to you, why the changes. We're going to say realization quite a few times throughout the webinar, so we'll define what that means. We'll talk about some different things as far as multiple reference frames, how you can get back to old coordinates should you need to. We're going to talk about how we track coordinates, epochs, and realizations so that if you do need coordinates from a previous time, you'll know where to go to get those, and that will be done through the site database. We'll talk a little bit about what's on the horizon for specifically in reference to coordinates, not just for us, but for both the National Spatial Reference System here in the US and the Canadian Spatial Reference System in Canada, and then do a quick wrap up. Again, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the Q&A form, not the chat form, but the Q&A form, so that we can keep an eye on it and answer those as we go. So, new realizations, solutions, and reference frames. So just so we're speaking the same language, here are some high-level terms that we'll probably say a few times. First is processing coordinates. These are the physical coordinates of the station on the planet surface relative to ITRF. These are typically not immediately viewable or usable by customers. Most customers are going to use our broadcast coordinates and not the physical or processing coordinates. There are some applications in IoT, automotive, other things where using processing or physical coordinates for the actual calculation between the base and the rover are used, but I would say for the majority of folks in this call, that doesn't necessarily take place. Broadcast coordinates, this is what most people would use in the surveying, mapping, machine control realm, GIS realm. These coordinates are used for the computation of differential baselines between the reference station and the rover. That means if we change your broadcast coordinate, it is immediately reflected to the rover when they go out and start doing positioning. Velocity, this is the direction and speed of a station's movement relative to a reference frame. Of course, you can have ITRF velocities or NAT, or broadcast velocities as well. Low dynamic stations, these are stations that have low horizontal or vertical velocities. High dynamic stations are just that. They have high velocities, either horizontally or vertically. Reference frame, this is the coordinate system allowing measurements within a particular frame. So this would be like NAT 83, NA 11, NYCS 2 or 3, which we'll talk about a little bit later. The epoch date, this is the point in time in which a coordinate is referenced to, not necessarily calculated or computed, but the point in time to which a coordinate is referenced. This means if a coordinate has an epoch of 2020, this is the reference to the time, to that time where that station would have been on the Earth's surface. And when we say realization throughout the webinar, we'll be talking about the identifier defining when a coordinate set was put into service. And the reason that we're talking about this now will become clearer as we go through the webinar. Some additional terms, ITRF 2014. This is the last international terrestrial reference frame that we had in service and use. ITRF 2020 is the current, as of January 5th, international terrestrial reference frame that we have in use for our processing coordinates. NAT 83 is the horizontal coordinate system for US, Canada, and Mexico. NA 2011 is the United States and spatial reference system. MYCS2 is the US's multi-year course solution version 2. MYCS3 is the trilogy. It's version 3 of that same thing. And when we say CSRS and NSRS, we're talking about the Canadian Spatial Reference System and the National Spatial Reference System here in the US. So pause for a moment and say, is there any questions so far in terminology that may be used throughout the webinar? So we make sure that we cover anything that we might need to. If not, we will keep on rolling. So NGS last year released a new solution. That new solution is NYCS3. This is a new multi-year solution based on more data for more stations, which we'll talk about in a second. And they also released the ITRF 2020 EPIC 2020, moving from EPIC 2010 ITRF 2014. What does this mean for SmartNet users? That we adopted these frames on January 5th, both NYCS3 and ITRF 2020. NYCS3 is referred to as the multi-year course solution 3. It is aligned to ITRF 2020. We have an EPIC update from 2010 to 2020, so a 10-year move in the ITRF EPIC. Supersedes previous NYCS2 solution, so this is what we published in January of 2020. And because NYCS3 aligns to ITRF 2020, this is the stepping stone to NatRef 2022, because ITRF 2020 is the foundation of that. We're not transitioning to NatRef 2022 at this time, but we will address that later on in the presentation. This solution shows improved velocity uncertainties versus NYCS2 because we have longer time series, we have new stations, and we have more stations. So approximately 3,400 stations versus 2,400 stations that was used in the NYCS2 calculation. If you want any more information about NYCS3, there's a link here at the bottom, and you'll be able to find that link on the website as well, should you need to do more research to find out more information on what NYCS3 may mean to you. This US should say Canada at the top. Sorry, folks. In Canada, NRCan has released NAT 83 CSRSV6 EPIC 2010. Sorry, messed that up too. NRCan has also released the ITRF 2020 EPIC 2020 for a new reference frame and a new EPIC, and we've adopted those as of January 5th, 2026. What this means is it's a new multi-year solution through GPS week 2341 for CSRSV6. Again, this is aligned to ITRF 2020 with an EPIC update. This supersedes the previous CSRSV 7.1 solution. And again, it shows improved velocity uncertainties versus 7.1 because of a longer station and new stations filling in coverage gaps. And you can find out more information about the NRCan solutions at the link shown on the screen here. So if you have more questions, you can also go here to figure out how the CSRS changes affect you as well. The really important part isn't necessarily some of the names and some of the things that we talk about. I mean, it matters so that when we have discussions, we relay information. It allows you to, for all of us to speak the same language. But what it really does, to you, is these next slides. So What does this mean to you? So since November 2012, we have been doing updates. We've done a pretty good, consistent job of doing 2 a year. We have missed some on occasion due to different challenges, but overall, we've been pretty consistent of doing our adjustments 2 a year. This typically meant that old physical coordinate update process that we would change it during a reference frame or solution transition, and all processing coordinates would be updated in the spring and the fall. And the reason that we do processing coordinate updates is because this is the underlying foundation of the network solutions that we offer with SmartNet. And as these stations move on the face of the Earth, then there can be error induced relative to the ephemeris data and other elements. That means that if we don't adjust the physical coordinates, then the quality of the network solution can degrade over time. So we adopted the manner of doing that twice a year. Again, physical processing coordinates are not immediately reflected to the user unless they're on a mount point that are using those as broadcast. But for the vast majority of customers, us updating the physical coordinates, all it did was keep the network solution in good repair. For broadcast coordinates, we would do this in reference frame or solution transitions, such as when NGS went from MYCS1 to MYCS2, and now for MYCS2 to MYCS3. We did adjust California on a semi-annual basis in the spring and the fall for broadcast coordinates to try to keep the jumps across plate boundary manageable over time and try to shorten that down. And then we also evaluated other areas annually to see if a new epic was required. So British Columbia, Louisiana, Oregon, Washington, where we knew that there could be effects. And then non-dynamic stations were evaluated on an annual basis. And then, of course, any unplanned updates may occur after a seismic event or large displacements were discovered either in an entire area or at a particular station level. These are the old processes that we have adopted. Like I said, we've been doing this since 2012, so we've learned a lot, we've seen a lot, and we figured it was time to do a wholesale review of our process and release and introduce something new. So, new physical coordinate update process. Again, we will still adhere to if there's a reference frame or solution transition, meaning that if there's a new ITRF solution that's introduced, a reference frame that's introduced, we would, of course, adopt that and do a update process around that. We will continue to do all processing coordinate updates on a semi-annual basis. This will be moved from spring, fall to winter, summer. And the reason for this is to better align with our new broadcast coordinate update that we'll be talking about in just a second. We will retain the same published epic cadence, which means that the summer basically I have a 3-month-old epic. So instead of having a 0.5 epic when we publish in 1st of June, we will have a .250 epic published in the 1st of June. This isn't a giant shift, honestly, because April 1st is the 250 epic. We would typically not publish until sometime in early May. So in reality, we're only sliding this back from a deviation for about a month. So the actual published date only is going to slide about a month, but it allows us some latitude to better handle a few things. And then similarly, our typical 750 adjustment is done sometime in October. Is usually introduced at sometime in November, and this will now push this to be introduced on Jan 1 to go along with the broadcast update. So all processing coordinates will have an update published on the SmartNet portal and the site database. An example would be January 5th published processing epic is 2025-750. So it's the October processing run, and it will be published on January 5th going forward, June something-ish, 1st of June for this spring adjustment, which will slide to summer. The more impactful thing for most customers is a new broadcast coordinate update process. This now takes place for a reference frame, solution, or realization transition. And again, a realization in how we're talking about it in our parlance is that the point in time at which the solution is calculated, not the time reference to which things are tied to, meaning that this is not the epoch. So an epoch of 2010 means it is 16 years ago in time, which means if we look at the physical location of a station on the planet Earth 16 years ago, it will be measurably different than it is today in 2026. If we were to update the epoch from something from 2010 to 2026, you would see a sizable shift in the position. We don't want that. We want to keep it the same epoch, but we want to say, all right, over time, the local effects will have changed. So we want to do a reprocessing and realize that same epoch at a later date. So we will be doing that now on an annual basis. So the 1st of January every year, we will publish a new coordinate for every station in the network, and it will have a new realization date tied to whatever the correct epoch is at that time that we're functioning from. So, for example, for the majority of the U.S., that means it's going to be NAT 83, epoch 2010, and it's going to have a realization date for today, for example, of 2026. And that just means that we know when in time we're going to, and we know what data set that we're using, and that data set is the current data set. We'll also do updates for any unplanned occurrences, such as a large seismic event, a large displacement are discovered at the station or the area level. So if there's still an update that we need to do some other time, we would still do that as aside from just January 1st. So new broadcast coordinate update process for low dynamic stations, the NSRS common epoch with a current class and a current realization, and this is where things get a little squirrely. So for US, that means it's NAT 83, NA 2011, MYCS3, epoch 2010, realization 2026, and this is where I expect Q&A to start. All right, so nothing here yet. Okay, great. Again, a realization is really critical to understand the difference. They've got a question this for epoch and realization. Epoch is the time tied to the current. Basically, if we're using HTTP in the US or TRX, which are the two basically projection tools that allow us to project between reference frames and times because we use the station velocities. If I were to move something from epoch 2010 to epoch 2026, you would see a large disparity in the velocities because the station does have a plate-based velocity and it has a ITRF-based velocity. So you would see movement over that 16 years of time, a large movement over that 16 years of time. However, if we say we're fixed in time, a station still moves, but it's not moving on the surface of the Earth necessarily, relative to that time. It's just moving relative to its original position. So if you have a small subsidence event, or the building's moving under it, or there's just some localized movement of that station, not shifting the epoch, but just measuring that station's position at a different time relative to the other epoch means you'll see 3, 4, 5 millimeters of movement. Maybe you'll see a centimeter of movement. Maybe you'll see 5 centimeters of movement, but you won't see, say, 30 centimeters of movement, if that makes sense. So an epoch is going to tie us to a time. A realization is going to tie us saying that we've processed a new data set relative to that old epoch, and we're now publishing that new realization so that we have the most current coordinate that we can produce relative to that time, and so that all the stations fit together better to themselves. So for the US, again, epoch 2010 realization 2026, Canada, NAT 83, CSRS V8, epoch 2010 realization 2026. And so in Texas, for example, the published on January 5th is going to have epoch of 2010, a realization of 2026. inside database, you'll see shorthand basically of NYCS3 R26 for realization, just so that we don't have to type out all of that all the time. So there will be a little bit of shorthand on the side database. Question is product coordinates and physical coordinates. Is it safe to assume that analysis to broadcast coordinates and processing coordinates respectively? Yes. So product coordinates are broadcast and physical coordinates are processing. So yes, those are the same nomenclatures. Could you please specify what Epic SmartNet will use for CSRS v8 from time frame in Canada? I'm correct, 2010, not 2020. Correct. So for broadcast coordinates for low dynamic areas, so basically almost the entirety of the US and all of Canada is in Epic 2010. The question that we typically get from a lot of people is, in Canada particularly, is about CSRS versions. Is my particular province hasn't adopted V8, hasn't adopted this, hasn't adopted that. We're still on 6, we're still on 7. Will you broadcast 6 or 7? The answer is no. We will broadcast 8. And the reason being is there is no way for us to get stations 2, 6, or 7, or check 2, 6, and 7 because the underlying velocity models, and this goes for the same thing with NGS, the underlying velocity models of the tools that we have access to have been updated, meaning that if we're using TRX in Canada and we were to try to take a ITRF coordinate and project it to a CSRS coordinate, we're going to get a version 8 coordinate on that station, full stop. That's what we are going to get. So there is no way for us to get back to a 6 or a 7 because the velocity models have changed. Everything under has changed, and there's no way for us to get to that. That's the reason that we can't try to hold to CSRS V6 or V7 coordinate, and the same thing in the US, while we can't get back to an NYCS2 coordinate. So like any new stations that are added will not have a NYCS2 coordinate on it, will not have a CSRS V7 coordinate on it, because there's no way for us to get back to that coordinate. That does mean also that if one of the agencies updates a coordinate, updates a solution mid-year, basically from that point forward, all new stations added, all stations calculated after that point are going to have the new realization, the new solution on it, because they've updated the tools, and there's no way for us to get back in time to those previous solutions. So the follow-up on this is the updated version of NAT83 CRS face compatible with all previous versions of NAT83 CSRS and uses the same 2010 coordinate at reference epic as CSRS v7. That is correct. It uses the same reference epic, but it doesn't use the same underlying velocity models, meaning that there could be a difference between V7 and V8, and there's no way for us to get back to V7 because the velocity models have been updated. Hopefully that answers that question. All right. I've got 2 more questions on here we'll get to in just a second. All right, so new broadcast coordinates in high dynamic areas. This is typically going to be California. Current epic, current CAS, current realization. So if you'll notice, this is not common epic, this is current epic. So big difference here is common epic is 2010. That's what the NSRS and CSRS are based off of. Current epic means it's the epic of the current processing that has been done and published. So for right now, for example, it would be NAT83, NA 2011, NYCS3, EPIC 2026, and with a realization of 2026. These 2 for high dynamic areas typically wouldn't drift, but so that you'll have Epic 2026 and Realization 2026. But we don't want to split these where we don't talk about realizations in high dynamic areas and then people are confused. It's just confusing the other way, but let's stay consistent. In Washington and Oregon, same update, Epic 2026, Realization 2026. So the new adjustment for California was just published on January 5th. You'll see the station be in NAT 83 and A2011 MYCS 3, Epic 2026, Realization 2026. We'll shorthand it again to MYCS 3 R26 in the site database. So, in the past, we haven't updated broadcast coordinates. So why are we suddenly updating broadcast coordinates annually for all stations? We'll get to the specific question, that specific answer in just a second. But the global answer, the general answer is to ensure consistency of station coordinates. This means from station to station because of localized geophysical events such as subsidence, glacial rebound. And so even low dynamic stations move over time. And again, I've said realization a lot, and I've explained it a couple times, but just to beat the dead horse, what do you mean by realization? We want to maintain consistency at the NSRS and the corresponding epic. Epic changes lead to large broadcast coordinate changes due to velocities, but we need to wait to communicate a station's coordinates are in a common reference frame and a common reference epic, but with a coordinate update for a particular time. So this is really critically important to try to convey, and it's hard to convey sometimes, but an epic is the time that we're projecting it to. The realization, the time is the time that we calculated it at. So we split those time. The epic is where we're projecting in time that this coordinate would have been, and the realization is the data set in which we calculated and used to calculate that coordinate. Because if a station has moved relative to, say, 2 years ago, we calculated a coordinate in 2024, and now there's been localized effects. When we put it back to, and we calculate it again in 2026, there's going to be a discrepancy relative to those two station positions back to the common epic of 2010. Hopefully that's clear. So what kicked us off recently? Well, something that we knew was out there, and I won't say we stuck our head in the sand, but we were hoping not to have to do this because of having this webinar and causing confusion in the marketplace. We've always reserved the rights, and if we go back to 2020, we assumed in 2012, that we would run into other areas with large areas of movement. Such as California has tectonic plate movement across the North American and Pacific plate, but as we got into it, we found that the largest area of movement in California was actually in the Central Valley because of subsidence. We've located a number of other stations. Malta, Idaho, for example, also is a large area of subsidence, and we knew that Louisiana. And so we suspected that Houston, Texas would also have subsidence issues. And over time, that has borne out. But making changes to broadcast coordinates is painful. It means that there's immediate reflected to customers. And earlier last year, this topic was brought up. And as opposed to putting it off any longer, we decided to adopt the process that we knew we were going to have to adopt at some point, which is annual broadcast coordinate updates. So this screen shows a recently published study found that Houston is the fastest sinking major city in the U.S., with more than 40% of its land subsiding faster than 5 millimeters per year, and 12% sinking at more than double that rate. That is not tenable in RTK specific network, especially when you start talking about stations sinking at different rates or getting corrections from different stations over the course of the day, over the course of the project. What we had reported and what we already knew was that there were stations moving at even higher rates than this. And if a station were to drop out during the middle of the day, you switch to another station, you all of a sudden immediately have a reflected difference in height between your base and your rover. And this is not really tenable for survey applications or really any application. So to take care of that by adopting an annual broadcast coordinate update, we should be able to capture that now and it be a common practice for us, a common practice for you as surveyors or SmartNet users in the field, and allow us to not run into the same big discontinuities as you switch between stations. So this is the impetus for actually taking this up for January 5th and where we are today. So what does it mean to you? Immediate impacts. Broadcast coordinates update is immediately reflected to the user. For the vast majority of customers, this is going to be sub-centimeter because almost very few, if any of the stations, moved a great deal. Stations at high dynamic regions may exhibit larger changes. We are always going to see this by going to a twice annual adjustment. Or going from a twice annual broadcast adjustment in California. It does have some effects. Stations in subsidence or other movement areas may experience larger changes than the sub-centimeter changes. And we will continue to document those and put site advisories at the site level. So if you see that, you can take the necessary steps. Future impacts, annual broadcast coordinate cycle for all stations. This means slightly longer intervals between adjustment for California, as opposed to 6 months of movement. You'll now be absorbing a 1 year movement on every station. This is both a blessing and a curse, meaning that you don't have a twice a year adjustment to contend with. You only have to deal with it once, but when it happens, it will be instead of the order of magnitude of a couple centimeters, it could be a few centimeters in California. In everywhere else, this is a significantly shorter interval. Like I said, we last published a coordinate update in 2020 for Epic 2010. And now we're doing it in 2026, so 6 years. So we went from 2012 to 2020 in the first one, 2020 to 2026 in the second one, and now 2026 onward will be 1 year intervals for this happening. The shiny, happy part about this is it does prepare us for NatRef 2022, which we'll talk about here in just a second. What if we need something different? Multiple reference frames in fall 2017. We introduced the ability to broadcast multiple reference frames, and this allows a seamless ability to fit customer compliance requirements for the realization or solution transitions. So in high dynamic areas is where we've, and legal requirement areas is where we first adopted this. So in California, Washington State and Oregon, and in British Columbia, Vancouver Island, or the BC mainland. To stay within standards or compliance with the governing bodies during solutions or transitions, we could then allow for a transition to the new reference frame and maintain the old reference frame availability for customers to complete projects or to work on until those mount points were deprecated. So say, for example, in the solution NYCS 1 to NYCS 2 solution transition, we offered NYCS 2 we offered NYCS 1 mount points, I think, for 3 months after to allow time for people to finish up projects and to transition. Similarly, for NYCS 2 to NYCS 3 solution, we'll have a mount point available. And then whenever we transition from NAT 83 and A2011 to the NatRef datum shift, we'll maintain a last mount point for people that need to stay on NAT 83 for a period of time. In our CAN, similarly, when we did the CSRS V6 to V7, we maintained a solution mount point for that, and similarly for CSRS V7 to V8, we'll maintain a solution for that as well. This also means For high dynamic areas, we have a current epic to a last or comic epic available to customers. That means in California, we did maintain or do maintain a common epic multi-reference frame mount point so that somebody could get back from 2026 back to 2010. How you would function in this, I have no idea how 16 years of movement in California is half a meter or more. So it would be sizable. We also maintain last. So for example, right now, NYCS2 2024 750. And then, of course, where legal requirements or compliance or statutes require us to, we maintain the CSRS EPIC 1997 for Vancouver Island or 2002 for British Columbia mainland. So let's pause for a second and see what we got. Basic GIS question here. Will any of these updates create the need for organizations to adjust, change our GNS coordinate system or other settings within our, not really, no. This isn't a datum shift where you would really see a problem in a GIS if you had a complete reference frame or datum shift, not just a small shift in relative coordinates of stations. So for example, when NatRef happens, if there's an adopted need to go from NAT83 to NatRef, then yes, you would need to adjust your underlying reference frame, but not right now, no, for that. Probably using older CSRS versions, transformations, CSV grids were manually created. We're not manually creating reference grids anymore or transformations anymore to handle that. So that would need to be handled at the rover level to address those types of shifts. Waiting for my Q&A to refresh. Okay, there we go. Okay. All right. So multiple reference frames. How do you access it? What does it mean? How to use them? Well, before we start about how you actually get access to them, let's break them down just a little bit for you. So we need to break coordinates into classes. And so for realization solutions, datum transitions, or high dynamic areas, we'll talk in the space of a current class, a common class, a last, or a last common. We don't need to worry about last common right now, but we would in the transition to NatRef, but not today. Legal requirement areas, we have the common, and then we have what we would call our alternate coordinates. So after we break them down into the different information, we then now can say, all right, what it means. And so this is what it means. We have an MSM format. We have an IMAX message type. We have a solution family, so NYCS2 for the US, for example. We have an EPIC, EPIC 2010, and we have a realization when it was released in 2020. So this gets us our solution, this gets us our EPIC, and this gets our realization in reference to a multi-reference frame mount point. Our broadcast global mount points that everybody typically connects to, MSM IMAX, MSM near, that doesn't have any of the other stuff at the end, will always be what we are calling our current. So that would be NYCS3, that would be EPIC 2010, that would be Realization 2026. MRF mount points will have all the details of what you're actually connecting to. Why do we do it this way? Well, mount point transitions are difficult. To get all users to move to a new mount point is almost impossible. So instead, when we have our global mount points, what we refer to as our common mount points, those move through whatever we're calling the state of the art or the current information all the time. So as we update coordinates, those will always have the most current coordinates of all the stations on them. So you don't have to transition to a new mount point. You don't have to change anything. We're just going to pull you along with us as we make the updates. If you do need something, then we want to make sure that you can look at a mount point and know what you are getting. So if I were to look at this mount point, I know I'm getting MSM. I know I'm getting IMAX. I know I'm getting NYCS2 solution. I know I'm getting Epic of 2010, and I know I'm getting that Epic relative to realization 2020. So I have all the information as a surveyor, as somebody, a field user, to know what I'm getting in the field without having to make any changes. Similarly, in Canada, MSM, IMAX, CSRS v7.1, Epic 2010, realization of 2020. Very easy for us to see. And if we get to 20, year 2100, then we'll deal with my decision to only have a 2-character realization number here at the end. I don't think that's anything that any of us have to worry about, though. So in general, if you're a machine control user, if you're a GIS user, if you're an IoT user, if you're another type of user on this call, I'm just putting general mount points up. These would typically what we'd call our survey mount points. But if you need specifically what type of mount point you need to use for your particular application or your particular type of rover, then that'll be in the connection configuration guide, which we'll get to in just a second. This is just a general overview, so we kind of have an idea about what we're talking about here. So our current class of coordinate, we're going to broadcast those on our MSM IMAX, MSM near, MSM VRS mount point on port 9301, for example, for survey. It's NAT 83 and A2011, Solutions MYCS3, Epics 2010, Realizations 2026. So all that's right there for us. Again, if you don't update your mount points as we update coordinates, you're just going to get the current coordinate class as we drag, as we move forward and pull you along. If you need a MRF coordinate, you will have to make the change. You will have to go into your data collector. You will have to select to change mount points from the current mount point to an MRF mount point. We're not going to you will have to do that. That will be a manual change step, a conscious decision on your part to make that change. So, for example, in the U.S., MYCS, MSM, IMAX, MYCS2, Epic 2010, and Realization 2020. So that would be the mount point that you enter, and that's going to be on 19301. And then again, the solutions in MYCS2, Epic 2010, and the realization would be 2020. So you're going to have to make that choice if you want to make that choice for yourself to use a previous multi-reference frame mount point. Know that in January 2027, that mount point, because the last mount point will be deprecated, and the new last mount point will now be MSM, IMAX, MICS3, Epic 2010, Realization 2026. So in January next year, we will deprecate the previous last mount point, and you will need to make that change to the new one if you need to. We would always recommend you stay on the current, but we understand if you have a project you need to wrap up and need to use the last. Similarly, in Canada, same nomenclature, same layout. The only difference is it's going to say CSRSV 7.1 here as opposed to MYCS 3. So very easy to take care of. So what if I have a specialized mount point? What if I'm in an area of movement? I'm in a high dynamic area. What does that look like? There's no difference. It's still going to be same terminology, the multi-signal message format, the correction type, the solution family, and then the epic. It's just going to be a longer epic with a 750, a 250, whatever it's actually in that mount point for you to use. But you, again, will have the ability to transition and to choose this should you need to. The basic easiest way to know what you should use or should not use as far as things relative to your rover, relative to where you are, or relative to what you want to get is simply go to the connection and configuration guide. Um, I can list about 7 billion different combinations, but there's a matrix behind this that would allow you to get the information that you need, how you need it. So if you go to the portal and you go to connection and configuration guide, you were to select your rover manufacturer and get connection information for your particular area, then you're going to be shown a server address and you're going to be shown your recommended mount points. And so, for example, this is for California. So your recommended mount point is going to be 9301 MSM IMAX, and this is not correct, so I need to update this. This is a older screenshot. I apologize, but it's going to show you the reference frame that this mount point is currently in, and it's going to show you the epic that this mount point is currently in. Similarly, if you go to see more, which you'll see in the screen, you will see 19301. You will see the MSM IMAX mount point that's available for the last coordinate, and you will see its reference frame in its epic. So you'll see all this down below so that you will have the ability to select what you need. Let's see, I can't do that easily. I'm in the wrong format to do that. So the easiest thing to do here is make sure that you go to the coordinate configuration, the connection and configuration tool to get what you need to see, and it will tell you what you're getting and why you're getting it. We have a question. Could you explain how SmartNet ports are organized? Why you connect to 9301? Why would you connect 19301? Why would you connect to 10,000? 10,000, I would just if you're still using 10,000, I would tell you get off 10,000, full stop. 10,000 is a legacy port that we continue to maintain, but it is not the port for the future, and it will be deprecated with a NatRef transition. So when we move to NatRef, 10,000 will be gone. We're trying to slim down the number of ports that we have to supply, the number of mount points that we have to that we use. And like I said earlier, transitioning off mount points is hard, but I would tell you right now, if you're on 10,000, get off 10,000. Get onto the standard global mount points, 9301, 9201, 9401. And again, which one do you need to be using? Go to the connection configuration guide to select it. Why would you use 19301? If you needed the last coordinate for that particular area. So if I was right now on finishing up a project and I'm in, say, California, and I'm in California and I'm finishing up a project and I've got 2 more weeks on that project, and I don't want to have to, reproject. I don't want to have to do a new transformation. I don't want to have to do new calibration. I don't want to have to do a new transformation or a new localization in the field. And I just want to use the last coordinates on those stations, no matter how much that station has moved. Then you would use an MRF coordinate. You should only use an MRF coordinate. You should only use an MRF mount point if you absolutely 100% positively have to. If I'm in I'm in the mainland, BC mainland, or I'm in Victoria where I'm required to use a particular coordinate, 97 or 2002, then you're required to use it. If I'm finishing up a project somewhere and I know that I want to be on the last coordinate, so I don't have the chance to see a possible disparity or discontinuity in station positions, use it. Other than that, I would fully tell you to always stay on the normal core or the normal mount points. The reason being is I'm on this project today. I know I need to use the last coordinate. Okay. I'm on another new project tomorrow and I've started it and I didn't change to the normal mount point. Say this is new project starting in December of a year and you're on the old one. That old one's going away January 1st. And if you don't realize what you're doing, then you will back yourself into the corner where that coordinate is now not available anymore. It is a stopgap measure to get you through something. It should not be used as, oh, this is the one that I'm always going to use. Always try to use the current coordinate class mount point because it will always be there. First off, you will not have to make a change, and you will always be on the most current coordinates and the best coordinates that we can provide to you relative to adjustments or relative to station availability. As we add new stations are not added to the old coordinates. So if I log into a mount point that doesn't, where I have five new coordinates in my, or five new stations in my area, those new stations will not get the last coordinate update. That means those five new stations are not available to you for use, full stop, because we do not put those coordinates on those old stations. In some instances, we can't get back to those old coordinates. So new stations go on current coordinates and only current coordinates. We can't go backwards. So a lot of reasons to stay on the current mount points. I would always tell you to stay on the current mount points, but we make MRF mount points available for folks that need it for a short period of time or are legally required to be on something different. Um, This is just Greg, your question on no Canadian mount points are showing V8. I need to go look and see why that is, but they are on all in V8. I'll make sure that by the end of this, right after this, we'll get them corrected. What amounts of shifted horizontally and vertically should we expect in Southeast Texas? Previously mentioned measurement coordinates, new broadcast coordinates. It depends on the station. So, in the western part of Houston, for example, there's pretty dramatic shifts based on subsidence areas in those areas. In other areas, it's really specific to a station. So you'll have to go and look at stations, station by station, to see what the shift is station by station. It could be a centimeter or two. It could be 5 or 6 centimeters. It could be a lot, depending on which station you pick, because there's this different subsidence zones in Houston that you should have seen in the picture. If you Google subsidence Houston, you'll and say map or visualization, you'll see where there's some that are giant movements over a course of a year. So it really is a station by station movement. So anything from a couple cents to more. 19301 is always available for anybody that's asking. 19301 will always be available, and I'll cover that in a second. If it's a long-term project, you just stay on 9301 is what I'd tell you to stay on. All right. So coordinate and epic tracking. So what's going to be available on the site database? We always publish the current epic for processing coordinates or physical coordinates. So ITRF 2020 will be available on all stations. Common. So MYCS3 is available on all stations. Current NAT 83 and A2011 MYCS3 EPIC 2026 is available on high dynamic stations. Last, so this is whatever the last coordinate is. It'll show up as superseded in the site database. We'll always have whatever coordinate was broadcasting last on that station will always be available on all last stations, and then all superseded coordinates that were ever used on that solution or on that station are published on that station, and that is also for US and for Canada. Additionally, in Canada, we'll have the alternate 1 and 2 coordinates for Vancouver and BC mainland, and for folks that are on Vancouver or in BC mainland, you will also most likely see coordinates in BC mainland in 97 and on Vancouver or in BC or in Vancouver in 2002. That way, if I'm working along the bounds of BC mainland and I get a station that's on Victoria Island or vice versa, I will have the rack coordinates for me. And even if I was, on the southeastern tip of it and I was getting something from like Friday Harbor or something in Washington State, those coordinates will have the 97 or the 2002 coordinate on it to make sure that whatever station you're using in that area, if you're on one of those alternate mount points, that you're going to get that particular coordinate in that particular reference frame in that particular epic. So what do you see in the site database? If you go to the site database, you scroll down to coordinate information, you're going to see the reference frame NAT 83 MYCS3 realization 2020 or realization 26. You'll see the epic date of 2026. You'll see the beginning date of 1/5/2026. And then you'll also be able to go in, click on it, and look at the MRF coordinates that are available for that station. So this makes a call out to an API to show exactly what coordinates are being displayed are available for the MRF coordinates that are out there. And then you'll also see superseded coordinates. So if I were to come in here to Hamburg Farms, I would see the 1.5 beginning date of use, and I would also see 11/11/2024 with a superseded. And when you click on superseded, you would see those superseded coordinates. So very easy to get to the site database, get the coordinate information, and then pull up your superseded coordinates should you need to see the old coordinates on that station. Or similarly, if you need to see the actual MRF coordinates on that station, what's being broadcast, you can click on that and see what coordinates are available for that station in MRF. So for example, if we brought a new station on in California and you were using, 2024 750 mount point, and you're like, oh, I want to go see what the coordinate is for that station. I'm not getting it. Well, if you go here, you'd see why, because that coordinate is not, in the network processing, in live for 2024 750 because it's a new station. And so that station coordinate wouldn't show up and you'd know why. All right. Oops. Let's not go there yet. Ask some questions. Mark, that's probably a bigger question for us to chit chat about offline. Let's talk about that offline. CL, if you'll have to go into each station. If each station has more than a 3 centimeter, the question is working with you the amount of shift for each station. We don't calculate the deltas. We just publish current coordinates and the superseded coordinates. If the station has moved more than 3 centimeters, there'll be a site note, site advisory at the upper right corner of the site, which we'll talk about in a second. If it's moved more than 6, it'll do the same, so that you can see that something's moved quite a bit. All right, on the horizon. So NatRef, new reference frames. So NSGS and NRCan will adopt a new geocentric plate fixed reference frame, NatRef 2022. This is the North American terrestrial reference frame of 2022, even though it's 2026. It'll be a new geocentric reference frame. They'll differ by more than 2 meters from the current NAT 83 reference frame. And then at the same time, there'll be new vertical considerations as well with a new geoid model and a new vertical datum versus the NAVD 88. What does this mean for SmartNet users? Hold on to your hat because it'll be a big shift. And it'll be a 2027 adoption, assuming they get it out this year, which is, I think, the plan. This is a big shift. This is a big change. This is a big deal. The good thing is it's a 2 meter difference. It's better than a 20 centimeter difference. It's better than a 2 centimeter difference. It's good that it's 2 meters because at least you'll know that you're on a new reference frame. There's a lot of good information on the NGS website about this, about NRCan's website about this. I would encourage you, if you are really a coordinate geodetic nerd, to sign up for their newsletters and to attend their webinars because they go to it in great detail. The question is, will we adopt it? Yes, we will adopt it. We will adopt it as soon as it's available. At the next interval, meaning that if it's available to us in June, July, then we would adopt it in January. If it gets available January 2027 on the 15th, I don't know. That's a question that we'll have to cross because we can't get a hard date on when it'll be adopted. But we will adopt it. We will put it out, and once that is available, we will conduct another webinar and put information out into the market to make sure everybody's clear on what we're doing. So wrapping up, and we'll come back to some questions here in just a second, but I wanted to kind of try to distill things down a little bit and may answer some of your questions. Will the broadcast coordinate adjustment affect you and what you use? This is not the simplest answer. It may or may not, but just go ahead and assume yes, that when we adjust broadcast coordinates, that it will affect you. Why? Because when we adjust broadcast coordinates, it is immediately reflected to the end user. When we update coordinates, it is immediately affected to the end user. Coordinates may change as little as 5 millimeters. So if you're out there on a Monday and it's been a wild weekend, your field crew's leaning a little bit. You may not notice any difference. Or if it's Friday and they're really distracted, you may not notice any difference at the 5 millimeter level. But these changes can be excess of 6 or more centimeters in certain areas, either depending on the MYCS2 to MYCS3 velocity changes, or more precisely, if you're in an area of localized subsidence or other geodetic or geocentric movement that may be happening. This may or may not be location dependent. This is station dependent. So we can't say that this particular area moves more than this particular area because it's really at the station level. Stable station level documentation has been added, identifying stations with greater than 3 centimeter deltas outside of California. In California, we expect relatively large deltas, but if we put notes on all those stations, all the stations would have notes, so it'd kind of be pointless. So there's approximately 60 stations spread across the U.S. and Canada that have greater than 3 centimeters of delta between the previous and the current positioning. And then station level documentation has also been added to identify stations at greater than 6 centimeter deltas outside of California, and that's approximately 20 stations. So out of 17, almost 1,800 stations, about 80 stations we saw greater than 3 or 6 centimeters of movement. So not too bad a percentage. And some of those stations weren't necessarily just because of, I don't think some of those were new stations where the coordinates were input incorrectly. So some of those were captured in a different manner. But for just real movement, that number is probably in the 70 station mark, something like that. There was 5 to 10 in there that were a little wonky for another reason. First and foremost, or the absolute most important thing to take away from that, is incumbent to all users to adhere to good survey practices to assure changes do not cause unintended consequences. We are a service provider. We're an RTK service provider. We spend an inordinate amount of time on coordinates, making sure that things are good, making sure that we adhere to good standards, making sure that we adhere to the NRCan compliance agreement, making sure that we hold to the National Spatial Reference System here in the U.S. But we're not infallible. We're not perfect, and we're not surveyors. So as professionals, as licensed professionals in your particular state or field, it's always incumbent on you to make sure that you're adhering to good survey practices. We do everything that we can to protect the coordinates, make sure the coordinates are right. But again, we're managing 1,800 stations, and knowing what's happening on every 1,800 stations every single day of every 7 minute, every single hour is a difficult task. So there can be movement, there can be shifts, there can be changes that we will not catch immediately that you would possibly see in the field. So please, please, please adhere to good survey practices as you go. Or the more general answer is, if you need to stay on the old coordinates, you have the ability to use MRF prep mount points. You can get to the last coordinate class by using the MYCS2 solution or version 7.1 solution. So you have the ability to get back to those old coordinates should you need to, if it makes sense to you. Again, I would encourage you, 100% encourage you to try to stay on the current class coordinates mount points, because if you go to another project and you're using the old coordinates, those will at some point be deprecated. To give you an idea what a site note would look like. So say, for example, for Cypress, Texas, there will be a site advisory that you can see. You can see it's online, and you can click on important site advisory, and you'll see where that falls. Is it 3 centimeters, at 6 centimeters? Should you check the coordinates for yourself? Will MRF additions affect the mount point I use? Again, not the simplest answer. Maybe. If you want to continue to use MICS2 realization in the US, then yes, you have to make the choice. You have to make the conscious decision to change off the current mount point and go back to an MRF mount point. If you want to continue to utilize version 7.1 in Canada, yes. If you want to just utilize what the latest realization or solution is and make all the accommodations on the rover, by performing your own localization, calibration, or transformation to adjust to any changes that may be made. No, you just stay on what you're doing. You handle it on the rover side, and you keep going on. I think this will answer a couple of questions that are out there. Will MRF mount points with last coordinates be deprecated? How long will they be available? We'll maintain the last MRF mount point until the next realization is published. That means that in the US, if I want to use the NYCS2 EPIC 2010 realization 2020, that will be available until January 2027 next year. Then that will be replaced with the next, the last realization, which in this case for next year would be MICS3 EPIC 2010 realization 2026. So we will keep the last mount point available until the next realization, until the next adjustment is published. So that is a year's time for you to move to make the accommodations at the rover. Same thing in Canada, CSRSV 7.1, EPIC 2010 realization 2020 will be available until January 2027. And then what we're operating right now on current becomes last, and it gets demoted to that last thing, and then you will need to move to that. And then the cycle repeats each January. So they will be available for a year, and then that mount point will be deprecated, and then you will need to change to a new mount point or go to the common mount point. We still use the mount west. So again, anybody that's on old 10,000 mount points, RTCM3 mount points or whatever, I would tell you to get to 9301 mount points. Simply to make sure you're on the current ones and that you have time to transition. 10,000 is available today. It will continue to be available until we transition, but at some point in the future, it will be deprecated. So, when you find downtime, switch to your mount points when you can. If you're located in the military, have several eligible projects, are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm suggesting I recommend 100% to stay on the current mount point unless you, as a licensed surveyor, have a reason to be on a different mount point. That is a decision that you need to make, that best fits you. I would tell you to check into your old projects, see how they check. I would tell you to do a localization, a calibration, or transformation on those projects. Then you control what happens as far as when you need to relocalize, when you need to recalibrate on a particular project, versus being 100% reliant on us. The other thing that this means is that you check into things, what your control is. You don't have to worry about those things. Again, we spend a lot of time on coordinates, but we can't handle every eventuality for every station as it relates to every project for everybody. So I'd always tell you to stay on the current ones, and that's going to be the safest thing to do unless you have a really driving need to be on an MRF mount point. And I would say if you had a project that's wrapping next month and you just wanted to keep using what you'd been using, it was working great, use our MRF mount point for that project, but you better have processes in place that when you start another project or when you move from this existing project to another project, even on the same day, that you get to the other mount point. Because then you're just not propagating error, but you're just propagating using that mount point to all these other projects, and it will come to an end at some point that mount point will be available. And more importantly is if a new station is commissioned today, it will not have an MYCS2 EPIC 2010 mount point or coordinate on it, which means it will not be available to you to use in the field. So any new stations that get brought into SmartNet will not have coordinates on the MRF mount points. So that means you will not have them available to you. You will not be able to use them because we cannot get back to those coordinates. So I'd always tell you to stay on the current ones. Is this getting recorded? Yes. I'm having trouble base station changing during the day when collecting point. It's creating two deltas, the points to multiple stations. Um, need a lot more information about that, Rod, about what you're seeing, why. It could be that you're holding an old solution. It could be a VRS if you're using IMAX. It could be a lot of different things with the reasoning. 2/10, 7 centimeters. Um, is more than I would expect. But say 3 cents between stations is not. I'd say right now it's probably improbable, but that's not unheard of over time. But right now, I would not expect to see that much variation between stations. Having just got through with the adjustment. But say, for example, in areas where subsidence was an event, has been happening before the adjustment, I would expect, if you're in an area that's affected by subsidence or something like that, that if a station were to jump, mid-survey, then you could see a discontinuity between positioning, and that is one of the effects or one of the reasons for this adjustment. And to move to an annual adjustment is so that as those stations move in different ways, it's not necessarily it's a coordinate issue. So there's two different things here. There's the coordinates of the station, and there's how much the station is moving. So it doesn't mean that when we determined the coordinate 6 years ago that the coordinate was bad. It just means that over time that station moves. It could be localized movement. It could be building movement. It could be area movement. It could be subsidence movement. It could be a lot of different reasons for the movement that is completely 100% not in our control. And unless we see, more than 3 or 4 centimeters of movement, then we will typically not change the broadcast coordinate of that station because the change of that station is, a lot more detrimental than just leaving it alone because it's immediately reflected to everybody. So, if you're seeing it in a particular area, talk to your SmartNet rep about it, and then we can talk to them and try to figure it out. Is this being recorded? Yes, it's being recorded currently, so we'll have it posted somewhere. For Ronix post-processing job will be updated current system at the time. Yes. So anything Rhinex is always on the broadcast coordinate. So if you need something else for post-processing, you can go to the site database and get an older coordinate should you need to. Could 2027 change twice? NYCS 3 realization 2027 and maybe NatRef 2022. I don't know. It depends on when NGS releases. If they were to release, like I said, January 15th, 2027, would we run a year on, the old reference frame before moving to NatRef? I don't know. This is a game that we're playing with, NGS, right now with when they're going to release. We think it's going to be sometime this year. So, right now the working model is that if they release it this year, we will test it this year, and then we would release in January 2027. If they were to release it tomorrow, it maybe changes the calculus. But I can't. I don't know when they're going to release it, so it's hard to guess when they may what it may do. Oh, questions. All right, let's go back through here and see if there's questions I haven't answered. Dun, 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 All right, I got a question. Will this mean that older collected data has moved and need to be reprojected? The technically the data will have moved in relative to space to the station. So yes, you could have to reproject it, but again, it depends on what you're doing. It depends on what you're locating. It depends on what your need is. It's for if it's for a GIS. We're talking about a couple centimeters. So if I'm trying to find a water valve, I'm mapping a pole, doing something like that, then it's functionally where it's at where it's at. and you're going to be able to get to it. If you are talking about from a survey project perspective, and I'm doing layout from one day, December 31st to today, could there be a disparity or a difference that I need to take account of? Yes, there could be. It all depends on the end user application of what you need to use in the field. I answered that one. Answered that one. Got that one. Got that one. What about a shift vertical horizontal aspect in New Mexico? Again, it doesn't, uh, it's not a regional area. It's not a state area. It's not an area. It's basically at the station level that we need to be talking about for a lot of places that you should be, um, you know, paying more attention that we know are problem children. Of course, Houston, because they're subsidence, and it's what originally kicked off us doing this. Cali, but they know things moved there. Um, so that's not typically thing. But like I said, there's about 80 stations across the U.S. That moved greater than 3 centimeters, 60 that greater than 3, 20-ish greater than 6. So the likelihood of it affecting you is relatively small. Everything else is going to be in the centimeter, sub-centimeter range, so it shouldn't affect you that much. So again, if you're working off a station, if you see a discontinuity, if you see a problem that you need to address, then you can go to the site database. You can see if there's a site advisory for that particular station. Those site advisories will be in place until sometime mid-year, and then they'll expire and go away. So yeah, those should be there and available to you should you need them. But really, you have to play it station by station as opposed to area or large regional coverages. Greg, I'll take care of the CSRS question on connection configuration guide as soon as we get off this call. Mark, I will get back with you. Okay. I think that is all the questions. Let's see, maybe there's a chat. Some people put it in the chat as opposed to Q&A. Okay, hold on. Let me go through here. Just to be clear, the Epic is not updated. CL, based on your other questions, I'm going to guess you're talking about in Texas. No, the Epic has not been updated in Texas. The only place that we do Epic updates are in areas of high dynamic movement, and we classify those as California, Washington, Oregon. So no, the Epic has not been updated in Texas. We're still on a 2010 Epic. Just the point in time which it was calculated is 2026. So you have a realization of 2026. Can I use survey data that were taken after the update and use them in CAD drawing that has survey data points from being up? I don't understand, but however you want to move things around is however you want to move things around to adjust to the changes. Then that's not a question that that we should answer based on laws. Monitoring subsides the eastern U.S. if my mark is subsiding at the same or different rate than the reference station and projecting to 2010 epic. Are the data comparable across coordinate updates and across realization since they are in the same epic? So subsidence is a little bit of an issue because HTDP, if you're using HTDP or doing projections, is horizontal time displacement program, which accounts for horizontal displacement, not vertical displacement. So how it will affect things over time, you can project things from one point to another with HTTP in time-based, and it will not take anything into account for the vertical. So if you're monitoring for subsidence, as we make changes, as we update on an annual basis, assuming that the station you are using and the area that you are working are subsiding at a similar rate or are in the same affected zone, then yes, you could expect things to move about the same. However, that's not typically how subsidence works. Subsidence, unfortunately, is even more localized than large geophysical events such as tectonic plate movement. So because it's really the amount of things that have happened underneath that area. So most subsidence that we see has to do with groundwater removal, removing an uncompressible liquid out from under the ground and the ground compressing down up under it. So for example, in the Central Valley, that can be not relative to any time, meaning that it's not specific to 1 year to the next. It may sink at a decimeter 1 year and then not at all the next year because the rain events in the area have either allowed them not to pump from the aquifers or have started refilling those aquifers such that they're not pumping out at the same rate that the water is going in, so it doesn't actually compress. So a couple of years ago in California, we actually saw stations that had been sinking at 5, 6, 7 centimeters a year, a lot, all of a sudden not move for a year. Go figure. So that's a hard event to calculate for. Perhaps an elementary question. With permanent survey marks with coordinates listed, is it still accurate or is it better to be regarded just for localization purposes? For that question, my answer for local survey marks is the moment that you leave from observing it, it is no longer good until you check it into something relative again. So if a survey mark has been left for a period of time, then it is not going to be good anymore because it could have been disturbed, it could have been run over, it could have been dug up and put back in the ground somewhere else. So once a survey mark is left from observation and hasn't been checked into from another survey mark, you should not trust it, in my opinion, but I'm not a surveyor, and you got to do what's best for you. All right, looks like we're starting to see folks dip off. We've been going for about 83 minutes. So unless we have an influx of questions in the Q&A section, please, then we'll wrap this up. If you do have other questions off board, feel free to let us know. Go through your local rep or email us, and we will get those questions answered. I'll go back through here and see if there's any questions that weren't answered. And there are some knowledge-based articles on the support forums for all of this, and then this will also be posted in the support articles once things are transcoded or whatever it's going to happen with this thing. So thank you guys for your time, your attention, and most thankfully for your patronage of SmartNet. If you do have questions, we're always here, and we know it's a hard transition anytime we do coordinate updates, but we thank you for your patience and wish you guys all best for the new year.